Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to House Talk. I am your co-host, Dr. Brian Maiden. Now, for those of you just joining us for the first time, House Talk is a platform that allows us to have those difficult discussions. Dr. Pitt, I actually love hosting House Talk because it's a platform that opens the door and enables us to have to come together and have discussions about issues and share solutions to problems that are plaguing our relationships, our families, and our communities. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, it also enables us to move beyond just talk and be the change we wish to see in others. So, for those who dare to tune in, engage in discussion, and more importantly, act, House Talk will deliberately and intentionally help you transform your life, and I truly believe that. So tonight kicks off what we know will be a powerful, thought-provoking, and at times jaw-dropping experience. It's definitely real on House Talk, and we're dedicating the entire summer to issues plaguing, challenging, but also uplifting men. And I think this conversation is going to be all of those things. So joining Dr. Pitts and me tonight is Dr. Gregory Williams, who's no stranger to House Talk. Dr. Gregory Williams has a PhD in counseling, respect, and is also a well-known speaker and teacher. Dr. Williams, welcome back to House Talk.
Well, it is fantastic to be with you two doctors tonight, and I'm kind of I'm tightening up the seat belt, getting ready for a wild ride this evening. But it is going to be awesome. So I'm just going to sit back and take all this in and maybe learn something.
Same here.
Looking forward to it. It's an honor.
Indeed, indeed. Gentlemen, I'm really beyond excited about our Summer Man-NESS Series because for a really long time I have taken issue with the bad rap that good men are getting because of those men who drop the ball. I knew at a very early age that though I'm a huge advocate concerning issues plaguing women and girls, don't get it twisted, I'm not forgetting who I am or where I come from, but issues plaguing men are equally as important to me. And I hate that you all aren't given appropriate space to purge concerning the issues and challenges that make being the man so difficult. And quite frankly, I get downright pissed off about the injustices and the inequality that men encounter, just like I do those we as women and women of color in general experience. In my personal and my professional opinion, none of it is right, and it really has to stop. It's time for change, and I've decided to use House Talk to give you all the space all summer long to have your voices heard on issues that matter most to you.
Absolutely, and definitely appreciate that forum. Now, listeners, you have a few options. You can take notes because there's definitely going to be a plethora of useful information, or, and Dr. Pitts, I think you can back me up on this, you can always go back and listen to this show or go back and listen to prior episodes as well. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. And
right.
The website is www.drlaurendpitts.com. It's my name, real simple, drlaurendpitts.com. And all you have to do is click on the House Talk tab, and you can hear all of the past episodes. Check them out.
All right. Now,
I'm taking notes.
Right?
I'm taking notes.
There you go. We want to remind you that tonight's episode is rated R, so parental discretion is advised. But we also want to hear from you on this topic. So call us live during the show to ask a question or share a comment at 515-605-9744. Again, that's 515-605-9744. L, let's go.
All righty. Seatbelts on. Feet planted. Here we go. So, gentlemen, it may sound old school, but Dr. Maiden, Dr. Williams, I've heard my entire life that men want a lady in the street and a freak in the sheets. What I've also learned from my male family members, friends, colleagues, clients, and the men that I've dealt intimately with is that y'all have some issues with us as women, that some of you feel like you've been beating a dead horse, or you don't know how to have these hard conversations with us. I remember maybe a couple of years ago, I asked my dad what it means when a man says he doesn't care who you have sex with. And Daddy's response was full of expletives because, you know, those that know my dad, he is special. He went left for a good few minutes, and then, and I wasn't surprised. He said, baby, he don't want you, because no man that's serious about you is going to tell you he don't care who you screw. And I know that's real direct, but that's how my dad gave it to me. And it hurt hearing that. And real talk, that's what I thought, because I'm like, why would you want to share the cookies? Like, who does that? And I'm honestly, you know, gotta soothe myself a little bit. I'm not sure if it was that he didn't want me because I wasn't handling my business sexually, or if it was something else because he never told me I wasn't handling my business. So, gentlemen, with that being said, do you feel it is socially acceptable to break up with a woman or just tell her to do her thing if she isn't giving head or sexing you the way you need or want? And I got a follow-up question for you, but I'm going to let you hit that first. And let me repeat it for you. Do you feel it is socially acceptable to break up with a woman or just tell her to do her own thing or be on her way if she isn't giving you head or sexing you the way you want or need?
Dr. Williams, as the guest.
Thanks, Doctor. Let's just take our shoes off and jump in with both feet. Well, obviously, if we're talking within marriage, then that's a whole different ballgame. And I don't think that's probably the vein that you guys are taking this evening, per se. But
we can. We can.
Well, I don't think I'm kind of from the old school. I don't think sex really happens between the sheets as much as it happens between the ears, and I think it's a brain issue. And if we can get to the understanding of what communication is like, and I'm probably the worst of that in my life, but I'm learning as the older I get, and now that I've talked about my abuse and getting real with relationships. But I think if we can communicate early about anything that's on our mind, our hearts, our needs, and then if the men will rise up to the occasion and stop making the focus about them and take care of your lady, she will, in turn, when she's happy, she'll take care of you. And that, my opinion is, if, you know, love, sex, passion, the goal is for one person's goal is to make sure the other one is happy as they can be. And then eventually, I think that love and passion will return that favor. But if you're doing it just to get the return favor, then that's selfish. But I do believe that communication and taking care of their needs is the goal. And then eventually, it's returned.
Yeah, good point. Definitely good point. So, Dr. Pitts, you were talking about whether it's socially acceptable, and I had to laugh about that because honestly, I have no idea what is socially acceptable at this point. It's very clear
right in the day and time we're living in.
Exactly, and so right now, ghosting is socially acceptable. So, saying it's socially acceptable, I don't know what that even means at this point. But I will say this: I think the ability to communicate your needs and wants is crucial, isn't it? You know, that,
I believe,
And I think that's the crux of it, that ability to communicate exactly what you want, what your needs are, and accepting that it does not mean because you communicated that you're going to get exactly that. And that's what you're alluding to, Dr. Williams, talking about it might not be exactly what you want because it is a partnership. And so you need to also listen to your partner as well. But I think the challenge is in that communication. It's easy to say, it flows off the lips. Just communicate. But it's not something that we are always good at doing. It's not always our strength. So because so much of our self-esteem is tied up and built into sex and sexual performance, I guess the question is, do you want to be miserable or do you want to have good sex? So if you want to have good sex, do what Dr. Williams just said to do. You know, you have to have that ability to communicate openly and honestly. And if you have a strong relationship, then, you know, take that risk. And there's always taking that risk. You know, I mentioned self-esteem and having a bruised ego. What if she doesn't accept what I say? What if she takes it the wrong way? What if I'm exposing myself too much? You know, it's those hurt feelings. I mean, we put up a brave front, but when it comes to sex and sexual performance, it's that's the challenge for a lot of men, just being able to do that. But the flip side is if you don't put yourself out there, then you're going to have a hard time getting what you want because people can't read your mind. Your partner, as close as you might be to her or him, cannot read your mind. So it's taking.
Do you think, doctor, that men are guilty, or is it just me, that we use guilt? We try to manipulate. We'll pout. We'll do everything to get what we want instead of communicate up front about it before you ever even think about taking the pajamas off. And I think that's the point, because it becomes at the time that you're in bed, and then we play the games. And men, I think, in the counseling that I've had with marriages that were getting ready to splinter, and this is always one of the key factors, is that, well, he won't treat me nice unless he's getting ready to go to bed. And then at that point, he wants to treat me nice. And then the woman will say, why would I want to do anything with him? Because he's been a jerk to me all day. If you treat her good all day, she may treat you good at night. But if you're not that kind of person during the day, don't expect it. And I just think men really manipulate. So we missed the target, I think, on some of that by being children mentally instead of just coming out and communicating before you're thinking about going to bed, at dinner, just talking about, hey, let's talk about something tonight and start discussing it.
And I want to piggyback on that on two very key points that you both made. The first is when you talk about men playing games, and what really frustrates me about relationships is that oftentimes women play the victim. And I know that men can do it too, but I'm taking the neutral stance tonight. I'm going to argue both sides of the fence. But we play games too. Something that pisses me off, and y'all know, I already put the disclaimer out there. I'm going raw tonight. You don't use sex as a weapon, because somebody told me, actually it was my pastor and first lady right before I got married, told me, if you don't take proper care of your husband, you better know that there will be plenty of women lined up more than willing to do it for you. But check this out. They told him the same thing. And what I counsel my couples on is this. If to the wife or to the girlfriend, if your mate is your priority and you are focusing on making them happy and pleasing them and taking the focus off of me, and they're taking the focus off of themselves and putting the focus on you, how the heck can anybody lose? You're taking the I out of it, and it becomes we, and you're focusing on meeting each other's needs. And you have to, both parties have to be willing to put the game on the shelf. Look, this is grown folk conversation. Relationships are falling apart because people aren't being honest. They're not being transparent. There's not a willingness to be vulnerable. And at the end of the day, and I'm going to go here, if you're a female that doesn't like oral sex and this man is saying to you he wants good head and bacon for breakfast, maybe you should tell him that. I don't care how fine he is. But the flip side of it is there's plenty of men out there that don't like oral sex and don't want to go down, don't know how to go down, and don't need to because they suck at it. So people have to be willing to have those real adult, emphasis on adult, transparent conversations about what they need, what they want, what they can deal with, what they can't. And as Dr. Williams said, y'all need to start having these conversations before you take your darn clothes off. Sex can complicate things, and if you laying in the bed and then you mad because you ain't busted one, well, guess what? If you had the conversation beforehand, he might have known that you don't have vaginal orgasms. You can only come through anal sex, or he only comes with, or you got to have those conversations. Because if you don't, it's going to be a problem down the road, and then you're coming to all of us, because everybody on here is clinicians. You're coming to us talking about, well, he don't, and she don't, and we're like, well, did you have this conversation beforehand? Well, no. Well, why not? Why? You was too busy taking each other's clothes off just to get them off and to realize that you wasn't pleased with what was underneath of them? Come on now. Come on.
And what we're all saying is you have to communicate, you have those conversations. But if you haven't had those conversations all of your life, it's just to say have those conversations. So the question is, how do you have those conversations? How does it build to that? How do you get the courage to have those conversations? Because it takes some courage to have those kind of conversations.
It really does.
Well, here's I think an excellent way to open a conversation. Listen to this show, then find your spouse or your partner and say, hey, let's listen to this show together, and pause it on some topics and let's discuss it. Absolutely. Or find a book that deals with it and highlights it and spotlights different views of it. It doesn't have to always come out of, off the back of a breakfast cereal box. Right. You can actually, use this tool to be able to open the conversation, and then don't be afraid to keep prying and keep asking. Yeah. And as we have 2 ears, one mouth. Ask something and then just hush and let them talk. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else? Is there something that I do that you don't like? Not at the time, but right. Is there something you would prefer more? Is there something that makes you uncomfortable? I mean, I even think, to go into the biblical realm, I don't think too much biblically is wrong in the bedroom as long as it doesn't go against the conscience of the other person. I'm not talking about bestiality or anything like that, or bringing the third partner and all that. That's obviously wrong.
That's another show.
I don't want to be invited on. Please leave me out of that one.
Later on this summer.
Oh boy. But anyway, I think it's. Oh, okay. But I think that as long as it don't offend the conscience of the other person, it says the bed is undefiled in a marital situation. So I think everything's okay. But you have to have the way to open up the conversation. Sometimes it's just to pop it open. Hey, let's talk.
Yeah. And Dr. Maiden, before we move on, I just wanted to add one more thing in there that I think that's really important, and I certainly want you both to share your opinion on this. I think that it's really important to go into those conversations with an open mind and an open heart without the presence of judgment or criticism. And what I say to my couples is, especially if they're pre-sex having couples, right? But they're doing pre-marriage counseling or whatever. If he says, I want this, and her response is, I'm not doing that, then he's going to shut down, chances are, right? Or vice versa. So you've already shut the conversation down before it got anywhere. So the recommendation here, listeners, is rather than react out of your emotion based on the judgment or criticism that you're thinking, approach your distaste or your displeasure with whatever may be presented in a more calm and accepting way, because you really can say, well, I'm not really feeling that, but this is what I'm willing to do. Or you can say, if I can just be good, transparent, as I always am, the first time someone approached me about anal sex, I said, I've never done that before. I have a very high tolerance for pain. I heard that it hurts, and I don't know if I'm really feeling that. And then transparency, when I did it, I'm like, I don't want that. That ain't, that it's not for me. So I'm serious. It's like, no. So, and I understand that it's supposed to be one of the best orgasms there is and all of that, but it ain't the way I'm going to get mine. But I had, going into a new relationship, I put that conversation out there up front that, and I think, Dr. Greg, you touched on it, long before there was any sexual intimacy, saying, these are what I call my non-negotiables. And I don't have a whole bunch, but the ones that I have, we don't have to be hostile about it. It's like there's a couple of things that I'm like, no. No, because where the anal sex is, no, that I ain't the one. And then the other thing is that did absolutely nothing for me. And yeah, it may have been because of the person that I was with, but that did absolutely nothing for me. So I don't want to do that. And oh, by the way, if you absolutely positively have to have that and it's a deal breaker for you, then I'm not the woman for you. It's that simple.
And it's a conversation to have before anybody ever thinks about I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you say I do and then have the conversation, and that it's too late. There's going to be problems. It has to be as early as you can discuss it in a comfortable situation. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so, Dr. Betts, one of the things you mentioned, and Dr. Williams, you intimated to this as well, talking about sexual intimacy. So what exactly is intimacy? And I don't think people have a firm understanding of that. Before I go into my next question, can someone clarify what intimacy actually is?
For me, if you look at me, I can feel the intimacy without you ever touching me. And I think if you can tap into that soul, that spirit inside of someone by just letting, just looking and gazing and taking that love and those emotions in, and sometimes that means the lights need to be on to be able to see that. But to me, intimacy is that moment where you realize that's the reason I fell in love with this person, and it's not about this. This is just the expression of me loving you the way I do. It's not about the sex. It's about the connection. The sex is just the result of the connection. That's the way I feel about it. But
well said, Dr. Pitt.
And for me, it's mental. It's that emotional piece. I need someone to make love to my mind before they get these draws.
Absolutely.
And that's just, I can't. If your conversation is raggedy, one of the other things that I heard growing up is if a man can get your ear, he can get you in the bed. And I honestly and truthfully believe that for some of us, that's true. And transparency, I was one of those women. And I'm not talking about the BS or anything like that. I absolutely love stimulating conversation. Stimulating conversation is foreplay for me, right? So that intimacy for me is grounded in that emotional, that psychological connection that says, hey, I can be safe emotionally with this person before I even entertain the thought of becoming romantically involved with them. And I think that, y'all did the switchboards like now. I think
good.
I think that it's important, to know that people, again, before the clothes come off, people need to be able to identify what it is for them. And two, it may be different when they're younger, because I was buck wild when I was young. I wasn't worried about being wholeheartedly stimulated, mentally when I was young. But it was still a major, major part, right? Even in my youth. It's like the guy that I happened to date when I was in high school happens to be on this call. And I would say, and Dr. Maiden, I would certainly like to hear you at it, it was like we had great conversation. We, even in our youthfulness, I feel like we still had some very powerful and intellectually deep, stimulating conversation.
Absolutely, and for me, that's crucial. I need to be able to connect with, and for me, that's part of that intimacy, that connection. Now, Dr. Williams, Dr. Pitts and I were high school sweethearts. She left me for a breakdancer, so there was that piece to it too.
Well, I can't dance, so I'm going to just step back out.
Oh my God! My God!
From the moment we met, there was just a strong connection, and even after we broke up, we maintained that friendship because we truly liked each other, because we truly had a closeness that has transcended for 30, 40 years now. So
awesome.
I think that's a big part. That's a big part of it. So I guess leading into that, my next question is, what are the men's greatest challenges in addressing sexuality and specifically sexual intimacy, or even intimacy without sex in relationships? And you can take that anywhere you want to go with it.
Being honest.
Always.
I think being honest. That's where I've made the mistakes all of my life. I wasn't honest, and after I finally came to the public with my abuse, it was surprisingly different in my relationships, even from friends. Even with my relationship with Dr. Pitts, just over the phone and talking on the radio, it would have been completely different if I hadn't been honest like I wasn't before. And I think that's got to be where the men let themselves become vulnerable. This is who I am. This is what I need. Yeah. This is how I do this. I would be willing to learn. I would be willing to try. I'm not a pro at everything.
Right.
I'm not a pro at hardly anything. So I will learn. Let's learn together or whatever. But the openness and the honesty, I think, is the key of that.
Yeah. And for me, you hit it on the head. You said vulnerability. I said fear.
Yeah.
So I think they're very closely related. It's that fear of opening up. My God, what if I get hurt? And then you pile on, the societal norms that men are supposed to be. Whenever you have those supposed to be, you're in trouble, because a lot of people can't carry that. So if you're supposed to be this strong, silent type, or this strong person that's not supposed to feel pain or expose yourself, then you're not really going to live life. And so you're not going to have those intimate relationships, and you're going to have relationships, but everything's going to be at a distance, and you're going to feel detached from, not just your partner, but if you have kids, you're going to feel detached from your kids as well. So it's a life not lived. If you cannot experience
that's interesting. When you said, "What if I get hurt?" Well, let me just tell all the listeners: if you aren't honest, you're going to get hurt.
That's real.
You're just going to pretend to other people that you're not. But when you're alone in a room by yourself, you're going to realize, because of your dishonesty to yourself and to your partner, you have been hurt more than what you would be if you was honest up front.
Good point.
Good point. And then you can deal with whatever you come on with head on. But if we're never real, gear up. You're going to get hurt.
And gentlemen, I want to say this to the listeners who are the mate. I think that it's so important that when your man comes to you and is expressing the desire to want to be vulnerable, to want to be open, to want to be honest with you, I think that it's important and it's fair to treat that with kid gloves. You know what I mean? Like you don't. People are so quick to judge and criticize and slice and dice with their mouth that they don't realize how deeply they wound people and at times scar them for life or leave a bad taste in their mouth concerning vulnerability in relationships because they didn't have the decency or the know-how to meet that person in a place of common humanity. And it's really much simpler than it sounds. If I don't want somebody coming at me sideways about something that I'm opening up and sharing about that has me sort of nervous and scary, why on earth would I come at them like that? It's old school, right? It's the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated. And if you're, you know, and here's the thing too, gentlemen, if you actually take the time to get to know the person, which is where the intimacy without sex becomes such a crucial component in healthy relationships, if you take the time to get to know the person, then you should know, or at least be, attentive and in tune enough to know that there's something that they want to talk to you about. And I'm not saying that you have to read their mind, but being able to sense that there's something sort of bothering them. Pay attention. You know, yes, we as clinicians, we study human behavior for a living, but even before I became a clinician, I deliberately and intentionally paid attention to people's nonverbals. It speaks volumes, right? And I think you have to take care and be willing to be gentle and kind and loving to people that are believing that they can trust you enough to be vulnerable with you. Because if you're not, you can hurt them to the core of their being, and you can scar them for life.
When we start taking our mask off, if the other person on the other side of the table makes any kind of gasp or judgmental remark, I'm putting the mask back on as fast as I can, and I'm duct taping it on, and I'll be doggone if I'll take it off again anytime soon. And I think that's important when we drop our guard and open ourselves to vulnerability. Please be open to listen and open yourselves up too, and find out what kind of love you can really experience together.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
Gentlemen, you want me to take a couple of these calls?
Yeah,
I can't wait.
Okay, so let me just go ahead and make this announcement first. So, folks, you are listening to House Talk with Dr. Lauren D. Pitts. And listeners, as you can tell, it's on fire tonight. We want you to join the discussion. We have callers waiting. I'm about to bring them in queue. And we want to hear from those of you that haven't called in yet. We want to hear your comments and your questions. And we're actually going to get to some questions that listeners had in just a few minutes. So you can call 515-605-9744. That's 515-605-9744. Caller 7528, you're on the air. Welcome to House Talk. What is your comment or question?
Hello?
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 Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. Welcome to House Talk.
Well, thank you for this subject. It's reemphasized some things in my marriage that my wife and I have experienced over the course of our 26-year marriage. And the thing that emphasized, well, my wife actually was listening, and she was, verbally agreeing with a lot of what you were saying initially about how intimacy starts before the bedroom, and she was like preach and giving me the side eye, and so I said, what are you saying for and preach and all this? We've covered this ground over the course of 26 years, but the thing that I've that we both realize, and this is what I kind of pose to you all, just kind of give me your feedback. Over the course of 26 years, you're going to have ebbs and flows in terms of intimacy, in terms of people's sexual drive, and so what do you suggest about navigating that? And this is for people who may not be married, have married 26 years. They're going to go through this and having the ebbs and flows of intimacy, and one partner being more passionate than the other. And part my, if it sounds crude, but there may be situations where you take one for the team in terms of pleasing your partner. So, what advice would you give to young people who are going through counseling, or what advice do you give them in terms of how do you navigate that aspect of sexuality and the marriage and keeping that whole? And I'll listen to your answer off the air.
Okay.
Thank you, caller, for your question.
Who do you want to go first, Dr. Pitts?
Look, both y'all been married forever. Look,
well,
I'm not equipped to answer that question.
Well, I'm not saying I'm equipped to answer it either, but I do know after you have children, life changes in every realm of the picture, and you're going to have to get that automatically is a ebb and flow situation. Especially if you have more than one child, and then sometimes it may be another 20 years before you ever even get to the bed at the same time with your spouse. But that ebb and flow definitely changes. But I think sometimes we're going to have to learn what gets us in the mood before we ever get to the bedroom. And sometimes us men need to understand, and I don't even know how to put this, but washing the dishes could be the best thing you can do for your wife at 5 o'clock in the afternoon if you're anticipating anything to happen at 10:30 at night. You have to meet her needs before the evening even comes about. And I have been so bad at this, but I've learned that is the key in the counseling that I've done with people, that, he's willing to do this then, but what about when I needed help with the kids when he got home from work? And I think that helps with that ebb and flow, and that's part of the entire experience of intimacy. Intimacy is just not in bed. Intimacy is, I want to help you be a complete person throughout the day, not just for a few minutes at night. And then I'll let the other doctor.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think the key is intimacy. If you just focus on the outcome, I got to ask that. It might be a challenge if your partner is not there in that moment. And like you said, it's that ebb and flow. It might be a week. It might be 2 weeks. And if you are just there with them, if you are understanding, if you are compassionate towards whatever they might be going through, or if they are just not in the mood. If you have that close relationship, if you're listening to them, if you're talking to them, eventually it's going to flow. It's going to go. As a relationship coach, that's what I talk to my clients about. Be present with your spouse, whether it's male or the female. Be present with your spouse. Don't focus on that outcome. I got it. Sometimes you have to just go hook yourself up. Handle your business, come back, be there with your partner. So that's how I look at it. And the question led into exactly what we were just talking about in terms of that intimacy. Intimacy is not just sex. Intimacy is that close. And being married for so many years, I realized that it's not always going to be about that sex. It's about the closeness, and the sex should come with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, throughout the day, doctors, do we not agree that there's, if it was all about sex, what are we going to do the other 23 hours and 45 minutes? You with me?
I'm sorry, what?
If it's just about the sex, what are we going to do for the other 23 hours and 45 minutes throughout the day? You better make it intimate from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed. There's more to it than just the action.
Yeah.
And to address the caller's question even deeper, sometimes you have to change it up. If you've been married for 26 years, you got to change it up. Otherwise, it's the same position, the same move, and that's boring. Change it up. Go experiment. Do different things, do different places. Just experiment would be my other key part of that.
All right, I'm going to take this next caller, and then we can, because no telling. Hold on. Good evening, caller 1033. Welcome to House Talk. You're on the air. What is your comment or question, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I guess I've been hearing a lot about intimacy and, how important intimacy is. I guess the question is, how do you teach a generation of men that don't know what intimacy really is?
Ooh. Which generation would that be? The one coming up, or the one of the past generations?
I would say the past generation, because our future generation believe intimacy is, talking online and meeting someone on Snapchat or Facebook, and don't know what truly intimacy is, because I believe that men aren't conditioned to even know what intimacy is, because we're not taught to. I heard you talk about being honest and and being open and transparent. How do you get men to do that when it is ingrained in them since birth not to show their feelings and be transparent and be open and be honest?
Can I touch on that first, gentlemen?
Oh, yeah.
Look here. B, you holding on to the side of your seat?
Yes.
I think that, and listeners alike around the world, I think a major part of that is going to come from the person that you're with. And it's something that takes patience. It's not, some people around the world might be saying, I'm too old, I'm not teaching no tutorial. Well, here's the thing. If you genuinely and sincerely care about this person, then isn't it worth it to meet them where they are and to be instrumental in helping them to love you properly, helping them to love you in a healthy way? And even though it might be foreign to them, it goes back to the previous statements that we were making about how important it is to meet people in a place of common humanity. Because for me, and I'm not sure if you were listening the whole time, caller, but one of the things that I said is that intimacy without sex is very, very, very important. I am a huge proponent of getting to know each other, because here's the thing, there's a whole lot of ways that you can be intimate without penetration. And I think that getting to know one another can be a time of exploration. It can be a time that's not just about talking a hole in somebody's head and preaching the intimacy without sex. I think that you can actually be that change. You can actually be the example for the person and sort of coax them along, if you will. I know that's what I've done previously, and I found that it worked very, very well. And I'm pleased to say that taking the time to help that person understand the importance and significance of intimacy without sex made our sex life that much more robust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, Doctor, the caller had an excellent point that I hadn't even really thought about when we were discussing this in the pre-show. The cell phone, the internet, the texting, the emails have taken the intimacy automatically out of a generation. And they think sexting is intimacy. It's not. And, that may be something that we're all going to see in our counseling with couples in the next generation, that they don't know how to communicate because when they're talking to each other, they don't say words. They just say LOL or whatever because that's what they know. And it is automatically taking a couple wheels off the vehicle of what real communication is all about. It's going to make an impact, negative impact.
Now, Dr. Pitts, do you mind if I interject? Because I have a question. I promised this young man that I would get to his question and send it in via email.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, so this question was emailed and comes from Theo, says not his real name. Says he can't maintain an erection, but doesn't want to use the blue pill or any of the aids. He says he's married and loves his wife. He says he starts fights with her to avoid intimacy because it may lead to sex. What can Theo do?
I missed the first part of that. He's having trouble getting aroused, but he does not want to take a pill.
Right. Does not want to use the blue pill, as he put it, or any of those other aids. But he's married, loves his wife, but he starts fights with her to avoid intimacy because it may lead to sex.
Yeah. Well, I think there's nothing wrong with trying some of the even the natural supplements that's out there. It doesn't have to be the little blue pill, Viagra, but I think there's all kinds of stuff out there that you could buy a GNC and things of that order that could help with that. And I don't know why you would not want to try to aid in that, because us men, the older we get, there's just going to be naturally testosterone is going to start ebbing away from us, and that's just a natural thing. You're going to lose so much percentage every year the older we get. I think there's just a lot of interesting and useful things out there that we can take from the natural to Cialis, Viagra, or whatever in the medicines that a doctor would prescribe. But that's just my gut response right now.
Yeah, just to add on to that, also say take a look at, get a physical, see if there's anything physically going on. As Dr. Williams said, as we get older, our bodies change. So see if there's not a physical reason behind that.
Well, I go to I'll be really blatant and open here, like Dr. Pitt says. I go to a urologist now, and I'm 55 years old. I'm in an office that is filled with 20 to 25-year-old men, filled, and they are built as broad as a refrigerator, muscles coming out of, and because of some of that stuff that they've taken in steroids or whatever, not indicating that's what the person that wrote the question's doing, but there's all kinds of, there's nothing embarrassing or shameful about, like what the doctor just said, that it may just be something that can be manipulated with a better diet, a better regimen of food or whatever that can actually trigger something to come back that has started to kind of fade away. But don't ignore it.
Yeah, and too, from a clinical perspective, it may be psychological. I know we're going to get into those, we're going to get into, some things surrounding ED in a minute. But it could be psychological. It may be beneficial to for the person who posed the question to perhaps talk to someone like those of us, on the show tonight. To I think basically what we're saying is to cover all the bases, to make sure that you're finding out what the cause of the ED is, and then that way you can respond accordingly, because it might not be something that requires the little blue pill at all. It may be something else that's going on that you have to get to the root of, that could be medical or psychological. And then for example, if it is psychological, to circle back to what the last caller asked, that mind stimulation is a beautiful thing. Particularly, right, when there's sexual frustration, you have to be deliberate and intentional in being willing to have non-combative conversations about the challenges that you're having. You have to be willing.
I guarantee you that the person that wrote that the question, I guarantee you, I put a $10 bill on it right now, that when intimacy starts, you will automatically have that thought in your mind. Is it going to happen? Am I going to be able to do this? What happens if it doesn't? How am I going to get it? And you're already 2 strikes before you ever start. So you have to be able to, because you're trying too hard sometimes, instead of, like Dr. Pitt said, let the mind get engaged, let everything else, work up to that, and try to, because a lot of this stuff's mental, especially if you've had a situation or episode or a violent trauma or abuse in your life that may not even you are even aware of. But try to open up your mind and allow the thought of hey, deal with it and see what the issue is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the other thing too that the caller made a valid point when he was talking about the generational gap, if you will, is that what that says for us as clinicians is that there's room for teachable moments, whether it be going into the schools, because for example, I always had I had days when I was teaching in high school where I didn't teach English, I taught life. And we had those transparent conversations about dating and sex, especially with my seniors who were getting ready to go off to college and going to be having a whole bunch of risky sex. I broke it down. So, on the lines of what the caller was saying about folk, just the younger generation, they just don't know what it is. I think for those of us that have a connection with them, that it's an opportunity for us to educate and empowering them as a starting point, right? That can, and communicating in ways that they can understand, so that they don't feel like we're lecturing them or beating them over the head or telling them what they're doing is wrong. But presenting the information to them in a way that makes sense to them, because at the end of the day, we all know, we may have did X, Y, or Z when we were younger, but as you've each alluded to, as we get older and our bodies change and our interests change and you get married and you have kids and all of these other things, things change. And I feel like we have to be responsible for letting the younger generation know that sex isn't intimacy, that it's the other way around, that intimacy is what is instrumental in creating a great sex life, not the great sex creates intimacy. And I think that that's a narrative that every opportunity that we have, whether it's our family, friends, community, our clients, our students, or whomever, we have the ability to change their narrative about intimacy and to really bring their knowledge concerning intimacy to another level.
I'm 55, and I remember going to the movie theaters when I was 14, 15 years old, and you know, meeting a girl there, and it would take half the movie for me to put my arm around him. I may get up enough nerve to steal a kiss, you know. And nowadays, it seems like the movie hasn't even started, and people are already in that mode. And you got to understand, it's not about the actual intercourse. It's about everything that leads up to that, and in the bedroom with a couple. And I think a lot of times everybody's wanting to rush it. Let's get to that point now. Well, congratulations. It's not going to last long. Make an evening out of it.
What else? What else? If your relationship is just based on sex, and oh, by the way, it might not even be good sex, you're going to be changing relationships like you change your underwear. Yeah.
So
do you want to hit that next question?
Yes, I do. I just got another call, but okay. So this question is from Pete. Says, I'm worried about my quotation mark size and insecure about pleasing women, so I tend to avoid sex. What should I do?
Can I go first?
Yeah, please.
So, I'm so glad you asked. So here's the thing. But naked transparency, folks. So I am, I was one of those women who always believed that it was always about size, because that is what my experience had been. When I encountered along my journey someone that wasn't as endowed as what I was accustomed to, it took me aback for a minute, and I had that internal narrative that it wasn't going to be as fulfilling as what I was accustomed to experience with men that were well endowed. But what I've learned is that there are plenty of men that are hung like horses, big willie style, and don't have a clue as to what to do with it. They talk a good game, but at the end of the day, it's still not a sexually fulfilling relationship, because they're so hung up on how grand they are that the intimacy is not there, or they're minute men, or whatever the case may be. The flip side of that is the same applies with men that aren't well endowed.
They just rely on their penis. That's it.
Yes, there's plenty. There are men out there, and you know, my own experience, and from talking to females that I interact with, there are men who rely on their penis size and think that that's the be all to end all. And we're because we talk to, we're like, he sucks, But the flip side of it, that's how we get down. But the flip side of it is, there are men who aren't well endowed, who are very good in bed because they've mastered intimacy. And, oh, by the way, if they're not well endowed, but they are attentive and in tune, as you all said in the very beginning of the show, they're in tune to their women's needs. I mean, we're grown. I'm a huge fan of Adam and Eve Online, adult novelties. So, I mean, there's so many other things that you can incorporate that can help you to have a gratifying sex life, even though you might not be endowed. And here's the thing. Every woman can't handle a horse. So look now, it's real. Don't be writer of the question. Do not be discouraged because that's not your story. Just because it's not your story does not mean that you can't be a phenomenal lover. You can. It's not about the size, because if you're, there are some of us who have grown accustomed to endowed, so that's how you sit. That's what brings you gratification. The reality of it is that Go ahead.
What would you suggest Pete do then?
So what I suggest he do is, did Pete say whether or not he's married?
He doesn't say.
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm going to speak to it from a married and a single perspective. If Pete is married, his wife knew that he was not well endowed before she married him, and obviously it didn't matter. So I'm going to say this as tactfully and as gently as I can. That's his baggage, and he needs to get over it. If he's married and she was with him, like it wasn't a secret, so obviously she loves you unconditionally. True. She loves you unconditionally, and that's your issue, not hers. If it were her issue, she wouldn't have married you, sir. The flip side of it is, if you're single, you need to know that there is, I believe, someone for you that will love you unconditionally, and your responsibility to her is going to, or him, is going to be emotionally present, to nurture the intimacy, to wait until you feel safe enough to have that dialogue and be upfront. I have a tremendous amount of respect for those individuals that can say straight up, you know what, I'm not, but A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. But if you lie about it, if you talk all this trash, and then, like I used to be in my youth, it's like, yo, keep talking. I promise you, if you whip it out and it's not what you say, we're going to have a problem. And I meant it, because we ought to be able to be honest. But women, men, whether you're in a heterosexual or a gay relationship, it's the mate's responsibility to create that safe haven for the person to be able to come to you and say, hey, I'm not well endowed. However, I am capable of A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Let me show you.
Develop your other skills.
Yeah, you fine-tune all your other stuff. We can go woo without having our back knocked out. I promise. Tell you what I heard. Tell you what I know. Just saying.
Well said.
What else we got?
Well said. I have another question. My husband and I have different sexual tastes. He's much kinkier than I am. I'm afraid I'm going to lose him. What should I do?
I get to go first on this one, too. Okay, Dr. Gray. Go ahead. I'm just gonna...
No, you're fine. You guys go ahead. I've enjoyed it.
Nope, go ahead.
Well,
I'll go last on this one.
Trust.
Yeah, go ahead.
Trust. If you and your husband have a good relationship, I would say explore. And it goes back to the caller who's been married, I think, 26 years. At a certain point, if you have that trusting relationship, go along with your spouse. And if they want to try something different, as long as it doesn't go against your core beliefs, experiment, have fun. A lot of times we did those things when we were younger, and then we get so stuck in our routine that, we do the same pattern over and over. So if you have that trust in your partner, and I'm talking about sexual trust as well, go ahead and explore a little bit more. Have that conversation like we talked about in the beginning, and then explore. Let things happen, let things develop, and then, give it a shot. Go for it.
Yeah. I was thinking about this when, Dr. Maiden, when you sent me the questions that the listeners had presented, and my first thought was, one person's kinky is another person's normal. And it might not, you know what I mean? It might not be kinky to them at all. So I think that it comes down to, like you all said, to communication. The communication is so key. And it's like, okay, you're married now, so I'm guessing the conversation didn't happen prior to marriage, but now you're there, you love each other, build upon that. take into consideration, what the doctors are saying about the exploration piece, and find that level of comfort, that middle ground, if you will, of what you are willing to do. You know what I mean? It's like I shared a few moments ago. I'm not willing to have anal sex, but there are other things that I am willing to do that are perhaps equally, if not more fulfilling to my partner, right? So be willing to have those dialogues. And then the other thing is, and I know that what I'm about to say is really uncomfortable for people, for some, but I think that it's imperative when it comes to a healthy sex life to know what you like and why. And masturbation is going to be another episode later on in the summer. It's going to be in there with the BDSM one. But you have to be comfortable in your own skin. So when I hear the word kinky, it's like, why is it defined as kinky? You know what I mean? What is the internal narrative about what's being asked of this person that has brought them to the place of labeling it as kink? And I think that oftentimes there's any number of reasons, how people are raised, whatever the case may be, but then the onus can also be on her partner, and perhaps it's the way he's introducing whatever it is she's labeling as kink. Does that make sense? Like, presentation is everything, right? Give me your butt. That ain't gonna work.
Well,
you gotta get.
I think if this kinky isn't about physical pain, handcuffs and whips and things of that order, and it's actual physical pain, I think the partner, because it sounds like it's a husband and wife, I think the wife, every now and then, if there's been a good open conversation about it, needs to, I think, sometimes jump into, hey, tonight, honey, pull out the kinky. It's going to happen.
Give him the kinky night.
She's comfortable with that. Yeah, but, and then him have that same respect of, hey, I'm not going to be able to do whatever that kinky is every night. But if you throw in that, hey, I'm doing this for you out of my love for you, then then it needs to be reciprocated back and forth. But as long as it's not something that is, drawing blood, things of that order, that, sometimes you have to say, hey, wait, no. But the kinky is such a wide variety of things anymore that it's hard to decide what exactly they're talking about here.
Right. Just tell them spit it out.
That's right.
I said, just tell them spit it out. Don't swallow. I'm done. I couldn't resist. I was just sitting here giggling. That's what crossed my mind. I'm sorry. I'm gonna behave for the rest of the show. Go ahead.
Do you have any other callers?
We don't. Not right now.
Okay. All right. So the last question, and we kind of covered this already. I'll just read the question. My husband has had ED for 4 years. I don't know what to do except open the marriage or divorce. What should we do?
Can you read that again?
Absolutely.
Wow.
My husband has had ED for 4 years. I don't know what to do except open the marriage or divorce. What should we do?
Well, could I be blunt? Neither one of those things. Open the marriage or divorce? You try to work through it. You try to work through it. If you're married, just because he has a dysfunction, try to get help. Try to work on that. And maybe they have. I don't know. But that's kind of a drastic. To me, it's just like bring in another partner, another person, or let's get rid of the guy. I'm not for sure that's a fair. I'm not trying to be mean, but that's really an extreme of an issue that is real to men. And if this is real discussions about men's problems, then there's nothing wrong with getting ED is not a lifelong curse. You can fix this if it is physical and even if it is psychological. So it is fixable. In some cases, I'm sure it's not, but in most cases, you can improve it greatly. But both of these options, I think, are off the table. And I'm sorry to be blunt, but that's my opinion right off the cuff.
I don't think you're being blunt at all, Dr. Williams. Actually, that hearing that sort of, I got in my feelings because my immediate thought was, where's the love? I thought about it from the perspective of, well, God forbid he be in a car accident and be, paralyzed or something like that, or have a stroke that incapacitates him. Are you going to bounce because he has this condition? Like, that's troubling to me. That's deeply troubling.
Well, it is.
To me.
Women do things the older they get. They start growing mustaches and things of that order. What are we supposed to do? Okay, I tell you what, she grew a mustache. What do I do? Get somebody else that doesn't have
she's
one?
She's having vaginal dryness, and I'm allergic to lube, so I'm gonna get a side piece. Like I think that is a really, 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 really extreme. I think both of those responses are really extreme, and certainly I'm with Dr. Gregan that I don't mean to sound harsh or judgmental or critical, but what's in the forefront of my mind is, where's the love? Because we're not talking about something that doesn't have a cure. We're talking about something that can be resolved. We're talking about something that can be addressed. And if the relationship is just based on the sex, and because the sex isn't on point right now, then you're ready to bounce. That's a problem, because what's the flip side of that? Something happened, you get uterine cancer or cervical cancer, and if he didn't have ED, or hypothetically he gets the ED resolved, and then 6 months after he gets the ED resolved, she has some sort of issue and can't have sex. Should he divorce her or open the marriage? That's not cool.
I think just around the bush on this one is grab his hand and say, let's see what we can do with the best doctor in town that can help us with this. See what we can do. You can go all the way up to the implants, and there's some drastic things that can be done, but there's some simple things. Now, it says 4 years, so that is a long time. But if nothing's been addressed on it, over those 4 years, it's going to progressively get worse if you don't ever go back, if you don't ever address it to begin with. So if they haven't joined hands and said, let's see if we can get help, go get help as a couple. And he's being very vulnerable with and when you lose your manhood, this is something that probably is a whole other show, that it's hard to look at the person you love and say, I can't do what I need to do. And that's devastating to a man, and a woman, I'm sure, but that's just devastating. And the only thing you can do on that is grab his hand and support and try to get it fixed together.
Yeah. And Dr. Maiden, we don't even that was an amazing segue into that last question that I was going to ask. So if you want to go ahead, we have a call.
Good.
Wait. Good evening. Good evening, caller. Welcome to House Talk. You are on the air. What is your comment or question?
My comment is the last few statements about the the wife that had the question about the husband that had erectile dysfunction and that open the marriage or divorce. my thing is, you said something about where's the love. My thing is, what about your vows in sickness and in health? Now, I'm a single person, never been married, but my statement is, and my thought is, you stood before man and God, exchanged vows, said in sickness and in health. That just didn't apply to you. That applies to him as well. So how about you stand by your man, see that he gets the help and the assistance that he needs, and pray that in return that, like you said, if something happens to her, the same is done for her, that he will reciprocate. You know, as a single person, it just kind of just boggles my mind, and it just irks the heck out of me to see people at times, I feel, give up on their marriage.
Yeah. Relationships, period. They bail without trying.
You know, it takes work. Yeah. It takes, from what I understood from a former pastor, it took her 7 years before she and her husband kind of like got in sync. Not that things were perfect, but 7 years. You know, there are some people that don't even last a full 6 months to a year. So how can you, you know, say that, you know, you're going to turn your back on your vows? Well, first and foremost, turn your back on your husband.
Yeah.
Then turn your back on your vows and God, with the vows that you stood and said before God. And
Good
not
word.
be there for him. Stand by your man. You know, that might be old and archaic by some people's standards, but please, stand by your man. And Dr. Pitts, you're cracking me up. I mean, you're just so real. You're so blunt. And the gentlemen, you know, that I just feel as though they're just sitting there and they're like, okay. No, she didn't say grab me by the butt or spit it out, don't swallow. I mean, but these are things that we should be able to address. And, you know, and we're not always able to. You know, how often do we ever, you know, men and women, and as black men and women, sit down and have an open dialogue and discussion about sex and, you know, oral sex, erectile dysfunction, and things of that nature. So I applaud you and your panelists for this evening and for the discussions. Thank you very much.
Caller. Thank you. Thank you for calling in.
Good night.
Good work. Good work.
You there? We're at 12 minutes and 32 seconds, gentlemen.
Till what?
Oh gosh, you guys are funny. We're at 12 minutes and 14 seconds until tonight's episode concludes.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Dr. Maiden, do you want to hit that question, or we want to, what we're going to do? Just you call
it. As part of my research for this topic, looking at some of the myths about sex, about relationships. So let's play a little fact or fiction. A few quick ones.
Okay.
All right. So, first thing, men want sex more than women do. Fact or fiction?
Fiction.
Yeah, I vote fiction.
Tell me why.
Because I want sex more than some of the men I know. I like that. I don't believe in using sex as a weapon. And I think I have, look, my nickname is Energizer Bunny. I think I have the ability to wear them out and be like, can somebody get her out of here. I just think that it's a myth. I think that there are men out there that think that sex is overrated for whatever reason or another, and their women's sex drive may be much higher than theirs.
Yeah,
I may be in a different ballpark on this one. I think women desire the intimacy more than men. But I may be wrong on that, obviously. But I think men want the physical. Women want the intimacy and the emotional. I'm not for sure women are wanting the act of sex as much as men. But I would be open to hear what you think research says.
Well, what I found was it's about equal. So there have been many different studies on it, but they say it's about equal. The challenge comes from societal norms, which they say are changing. It was at one point where women had to be more demure and, wait for the man to make the first move and pursue it and act like they didn't enjoy it as much. But with this new sexual revolution, women are more open about their needs and their wants and their desires and, what turns them on and gets them off. So it's your answer is both correct, but yes. It's about equal. So
interesting.
You each get a dollar for that one. All right. So this leads to the next one. Men want to do the chasing. Fact or fiction?
Oh. I think women are just better at it.
Say it. What do you mean by that?
I think they have their own way of doing it where it doesn't look like chasing. But
it's
it is.
The truth anyhow.
Yeah, and they're good at it. But I think men are obviously more bold about it, and in this day and age, I mean, just walking down the hospital at Baylor College of Medicine here, I see men hitting on women they just walk by and go, "Ooh, fine." You don't see women do that. Although maybe Dr. Pitts does, what she sounds like tonight.
I'm trying to tell you don't know it. I sure do.
I think men are more vocal maybe in that realm, but yeah, okay, that was interesting too.
Okay, all right, we're gonna keep rolling.
Yep.
Big feet equals big penis equals good sex.
That's a lie. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think all the way around.
That is a myth all freaking day, and it's a bad one.
Why is it a bad one?
Because it's just not true. I mean, I've had both. I've had men with big feet and big penises and big hands, and I've had men with little feet, little hands, and big penises, and I've had men with big feet, big hands, and look like I've run the gamut. And one has nothing, unless you have a foot fetish and a hand fetish. Neither of them have anything to do with how good the sex is. And penis size is not governed by size of hands and feet. It's just not. Sorry. Myth. Just saying. Sorry.
And you're correct. That has been proven. Dr. Williams, you want anything on to that, or we'll keep rolling?
It sounds like Dr. Pitts knows what she's talking about.
Yeah.
Hey, look now. This ain't my first rodeo. That one on you. Come on now.
All right. Great sex comes naturally.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Total mess. Totally, that's a mess.
All right, expound on that.
Yeah. I think it needs to be. It's a learning experience.
I agree.
And I guess what the word sex means. Intercourse is intercourse, but the love and like we've been talking about the whole night, the intimacy, the making the person have that connection with the soul and the emotions, and making it last for hours, and the romance and all of that. That's something that needs to be learned, and it's a lifelong learning, because just because you learn how to do it one way really good, that way is going to get old in about 2 months, and it won't be any good anymore. And you're going to have to get creative and keep your mind open to what can be developed later on. But no, I disagree with that completely.
I do too, for the same reasons, and I think that yes, we are created as sexual beings, but just like we learn to walk and speak and to do everything else in life that we learn to do. I think that being a good lover is something that one has to master. And in order to master it, you got to practice. Just my take on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're absolutely right. I think it's important to learn and grow. And that's not just with sex, but everything in life. About learning and growing.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I used to ear hustle. I grew up in Salem, New Jersey, West Side Court projects to be exact. And just hearing the older dudes talking about it, I thought sex was really just pounding it out. They would talk about how they would just go hard at somebody, and early on, that's what I did. You learn from your environment, and as I had more experience, more partners, I started adding to my repertoire, and it started to grow. And not only did I enjoy it more, but I want to say my partners did it as well. So I don't think it comes naturally. For some people, it may. But you also have to build your toolbox. You have to build your skills up as well. So whatever comes naturally, you still have to build on it. So the last question I have, men who watch porn become obsessed with it and then prefer it over sex with their wives. Fact or fiction?
Fiction.
Yeah, prefer it over sex with your wives? No.
Mm-hmm.
I think the computer has messed us up and the internet has messed us up sexually. But nothing is preferred over sex with your spouse. If it's open communication and it's working right. There's just no way that can be replaced. Internet cannot do that. That's my opinion.
Yeah,
it's a farce. It's a farce.
Yeah, I agree. I have first thing that came to my mind is if he's picking porn over his wife, she ain't giving it to him right. But that's my worldview. And then the other thing with that too is why he got all that time on his hands to be looking at porn all the time. There needs to be some adjustment being made, and if the spouse is actually addicted to porn, that's something that needs to be addressed with a clinician. Because then there's
addictions out there, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
We all know and all had people on the other side of our desk that are addicted, and it does affect the bedroom, whether you want to admit to it or not. It does, and it will pretty darn quick. It's something that needs to be addressed. It's not just a casual, a harmless activity for the man or the woman to be involved with. It will affect the wiring up in your mind, which is where a lot of that intimacy begins and ends. It does get up in your attic and kick a couple shingles loose. And you have to understand, is it worth it? No. You better put your attention and your energy and your focus on what God's brought you into your life in that spouse.
Well said. Dr. Pitts?
I mean, seriously, it's very serious, and it's, I joke and laugh and clown a lot, but it's disheartening too, because if that's the case, it tells me that there's a far bigger issue at hand, and that absolutely needs to be addressed, whether it's a non-gratifying sexual relationship between the couple or a deeper problem with the man. no matter how you look at it, in my mind, there's a deep-seated issue that certainly needs to be addressed via a clinician. There are sex therapists out there. For those listeners, if this is your story, we would certainly encourage you, Google it. There is an entire organization of certified sex therapists that their specialty is addressing sexual dysfunction and sexual problems within relationships. And if that is your story, then certainly I believe that I can speak for all of us that our encouragement would be for you to seek additional help to get this matter resolved, because it's not healthy and it is going to create far greater problems as long as it's allowed to continue. So it's certainly something that you want to address as quickly as possible. And in doing that, you have to be willing to be honest with each other and with the therapist about what's going on in your relationship as it relates to fulfillment within the intimacy of your union, whether it be, boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever. And what is it about the porn that the man is finding so much fulfillment in? What void is the porn filling? Because it's definitely filling a void if he's finding more gratification in watching porn than he is in being intimate with his mate.
Definitely a substitute for that intimacy, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, and just to circle back, I received an update from our first questioner, Theo, not his real name.
Yeah.
Said, thank you very much. He found your answers to be very enlightening and helpful. So
good.
Just to follow up on that.
Very good.
Yeah.
So glad we could help. Dr. Maiden, you want to ask that last question? I think that Dr. Williams can really address that. The two of you can hit that, and then we can go ahead and close out. Sure.
I don't see it, Dr. Cook.
I'll ask it for you.
Go ahead.
What role does sexual abuse play in a man's mating practices and/or sexual performance and sex drive?
This is a whole show within itself, Dr. Pitts. I know your story and you know mine. It plays in every area of the victim, the abused person, not just in the bedroom, but in the trust issues, in being honest. Like I've said, the last year, I was the biggest liar on the face of the earth for all those years that I've manipulated people that I was just fine and dandy when I was dying on the inside emotionally. So it can absolutely bring a lot of things. And I think probably if we're just dog ear to sex, I believe there are some issues that need to be brought up in a relationship of, hey, I was sexually abused. If I act cold at a certain time in the act of intimacy, don't take it personal. We'll talk about it later or at the time or whatever, because there are some things that are said, done, touched on me that automatically bring back trauma. And I just try to stay away from that area, although it's hard sometimes. But I think openness, honesty, but it does. It affects every part of your life. And in the bedroom, it can destroy it. And I am one of those people that it has destroyed, and it's a roller coaster of good, bad, and ugly. But if you finally have the nerve to take the mask off and talk about it, that's when there's the light starting to come at the end of the tunnel. That's the key of expressing what's going on, not be afraid to trust your spouse or your partner with that honesty. That's really important.
Dr. Fitz, you want to address this a little bit as well?
Yeah, and thank you for your transparency, Dr. Williams. I think, piggybacking on what Dr. Williams said, it's like, how can it not, right? When you look at the magnitude of violation that sexual abuse causes, but in that, though, I think that it's very important to understand that because the violation is so great, it is going to adversely impact your life. And if you don't get the appropriate help, if you don't get additional support to address the abuse that you were subjected to, it continues to serve as a violation. It continues to violate you, even though the perpetrator might be dead and gone. So there has to be a willingness, even within the embarrassment, the shame, and the humiliation that comes with a violation of that degree. There has to be a willingness to get free from it. And getting free from it doesn't come with promiscuity, as people who are sexually abused often engage in. That's certainly what I did. It doesn't get resolved that way. That only exacerbates the problem. There has to be counsel sought that can help you as the victim of sexual abuse to make sense of it for as much as it would make sense, and to learn healthy coping strategies that can get you through it. Because what will happen if you don't, and I know those that are listening that have experienced it, and Dr. Williams has addressed it on previous shows, you have nightmares about it. You have flashbacks about it. So how can it not adversely affect your sex life? So you have to, it is my belief professionally that if you want to get beyond it, and if you want to have a healthy sex life, then give someone such as those of us that are on this show tonight, or as I said, a sex therapist, the opportunity based on our formal education and training to help you to heal and to get back into a safe place and space in your sexuality and your sexual functioning so that you can enjoy it the way you're supposed to enjoy it. And not have
Can I say something that something that may be very, very, very controversial, but I don't even think I want to say this, but I feel the need to. If you are or have been an abuser, there's hope for you too. And I'm about ready to cry just by even saying that. But my dad had potential for hope and healing. He chose not to. If you are an abuser tonight, you can get back to normalcy in a sex life that's not your child, or that's not somebody that's outside of what you ought to be able to, you should be hurting people. But there is hope for you too. You can get back, and you have to reach out to those sex therapists. And boy, I never thought I would say that, but
that just shows your humanity
for them. That's wild that came to my mind. But boy, those people out there that are abusing other people, stop and get help, and you can have an awesome sex life in a normal relationship that doesn't have to hurt and abuse children.
Absolutely.
Dr. Greg,
okay,
I'm so glad you said that, because that takes me back to the beginning of my grad school years, and our clinical director asked us, what is the one population that we absolutely positively could not work with? And that I said those that are abusers, sex offenders. And I'm so thankful for the education that I received at Drexel University and how they instilled in us the importance of meeting people in a place of common humanity. What I believe today is that anyone that engages in such an egregious offense and behavior of sexually abusing another human being clearly has deep-seated issues and a very strong possibility were themselves once a victim. And they, as horrible as society may believe that they have a right to get help too. And for those of us that are clinicians, when you look at our code of ethics, when you look at the oaths that we take, we don't get to pick and choose who we help. We have a moral responsibility to do no harm. Now, certainly, if you're one of those individuals that just says, I just absolutely positively, under no circumstances, can I work with that I can't work with that population, then certainly you shouldn't, because you would end up doing harm. But for those of us that understand the importance of putting our own trauma aside and putting our own biases aside and meeting people in a place of common humanity, I believe that we have the ability to be instrumental in rehabilitating the offender as well. So, Dr. Greg, thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's time that we teach them how to break the cycle. If not, it may never be broken, and it just goes from generation to generation to generation. Time for us to break that. Let's just stop all that stuff.
Well said. Agreed.
Well, folks, goodness gracious, we have covered an awful lot of ground tonight. And if you're feeling like I'm feeling right now, you're probably feeling a little bit overwhelmed, a lot overwhelmed. You're probably perspiring and had to go get something to drink and everything else. I know I sure did. But it's good stuff. And it is absolutely, positively conversation that we had to have. We have to get at the essence of these hard topics so we can get healthier and stronger individually in our relationships, our families, and our communities. So, gentlemen, with the wealth of knowledge that we have shared with these listeners tonight, if you had to pick one or two key things that you really want to drive home to our listeners, what would those keys be? Dr. Williams?
Mine's just one. Communication. Honest communication. That's the only way. That's the first way. That's the first step. That's what I got out of tonight.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. For me, every relationship I have is about communication. If I have strong, honest, open communication with somebody, chances are we have a really good relationship. And I guess the second piece would be willing to be vulnerable. It took me, maturing. It took me growing to learn that it's okay to be vulnerable. And out of that came greater rewards, not just for that person, but definitely for myself. Deeper, stronger relationships and stronger emotional ties. What about you, Dr. Pitts?
Wow. I think the biggest thing is and I guess it ties into the vulnerability piece, there has to be a level of transparency. I think that how we get to that place and space where we become comfortable in our own sexuality and to be able to communicate effectively about what we want and need or don't want or don't need. I think that we have to stay true to who we are, and we have to be so comfortable in that truth that we're able to communicate it to our partners, to our mates in healthy ways in order to sustain healthy and robust sex lives.
Yeah, well said. Well said. All right. Thank you very much. Listeners, I definitely want to thank you for tuning in tonight. And don't forget to join me and Dr. Pitts next week as we continue our summer 2019 MAN-NESS Series with the Tribe, Fatherhood, and Actively Engaged Fathers. Dr. Williams, definitely want to thank you for your knowledge, your transparency, and your vulnerability. Dr. Pitts, thank you for this very stimulating conversation. I know I got a lot of it, and I know the readers, the listeners did as well. So good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good night. Thank you.